This meeting is part of an early public engagement process. Your feedback can influence the final guidelines, and there's no technical background required to participate. First, a quick Zoom orientation. We have disabled the chat function during this public meeting. If you would like to submit comments during the presentation, you may use the Q&A function throughout the meeting. We will address questions during the public comment session only at the end of our presentation. Please note that you should be able to see a PowerPoint presentation on the screen. If you can't, it might be that you need to check what Zoom tab you have selected. If you are not currently seeing a presentation, please select the tab that has my colleague's name, Creston Tom. And before we move on, I'd like to share some meeting agreements for this workshop. These will help encourage productive discussion and are as follows. Be respectful. Be kind and create a comfortable space for everyone. Allow others to share their thoughts and experiences. Take space and/or make space. If you have a lot to say, that's great. We encourage you to share, but please be mindful and leave room for others to take part as well. Listen to understand. Listen without judgment or jumping to conclusions. And consider equity. People from all over California are here to work on our incentive programs. Our diverse perspectives can help us overcome barriers, and we can develop unique solutions that are fair for everyone. And with that, we've finished housekeeping and will begin the presentation portion. So for today's agenda, we will begin by explaining the role of incentives. Next, we will provide an overview of the Carl Moyer Program, including background, funding outcomes, and eligible source categories. We will then discuss the Drive Forward initiative and how the changes being considered play a role in it. We'll then go over the next steps in the public process, including engagement opportunities and how to contact us. Following the presentation, we will open it up for a Q&A and public comment session and then conclude our public meeting. Please also note that as we go through the presentation, we will be pausing occasionally to poll you, the audience. There are 4 polls in total, and they are there to help us better understand who we are connecting with today. We strongly encourage folks to participate in the polls. For each poll, we will allow 1 minute for response and then display the results. Incentives plays a critical role in today's ever-changing landscape. California is leading the nation, and some may say the world, in the transition to cleaner technology, including zero-emission technology. Highlighting California's goals in the Governor's Executive Order N-79-20 calls for California's transition to 100% zero-emission by 2035 for drayage trucks and 2045 for heavy-duty vehicles, as well as 2035 for zero-emission off-road vehicles and equipment where feasible. Incentives encourage businesses to transition to cleaner technology, and it stimulates the marketplace to manufacture cleaner technologies as well. CARB's portfolio of incentive programs include those that CARB implements and those that the CARB provides guidelines for Air District implementation. Each of these incentive programs provides its own niche opportunity for those interested in applying for incentives. Today, we will be talking about the Carl Moyer Program, the longest running incentive program in CARB's portfolio. And so for today's first poll, we would like to know who you're joining us as today. Are you joining us as someone from a community group, a non-governmental or nonprofit organization, an industry representative, Air District staff, another government agency, CARB staff, or other? If you are a community member, interested resident, or anyone else who feels the descriptions listed here don't describe how you would identify, please feel free to select other. We will start the poll at this time and allow about a minute for responses to it. Great, seeing lots of responses already. Still seeing the responses trickle in. Give it about 20 more seconds or so. And that looks like just about the right amount of time. Let's go ahead and share the results now. It looks like we have a pretty even mix of folks from all kinds of walks, lots of industry representation here. That's wonderful. We're seeing our Air District partners, other government agencies, non-governmental and nonprofit organizations, really great. And then, of course, other and some CARB staff as well. Wonderful. Thank you so much for participating in the polls and attending today. Really looking forward to going through the rest of this presentation with you and the discussion at the end. We can stop sharing results at this time and move on with the presentation portion, which is going to be us kicking off an overview of the Carl Moyer Program. Established in 1998, the Carl Moyer Program was inspired by Dr. Carl Moyer's vision to bring business and government together to achieve early, lasting emission reductions from mobile sources. Its framework has become the foundation for many of the agency's incentive programs and has influenced similar efforts at the local, state, and federal levels. At its core, the Carl Moyer Program achieves cost-effective emission reductions and provides State Implementation Plan, or SIP, credible emission reductions. The Carl Moyer Program also has an environmental justice component that requires 50% of the largest 5 air districts' funding to be allocated to projects achieving emission reductions in communities with the most significant exposure to air contaminants or localized air contaminants, or both, including but not limited to communities of minority populations or low-income populations, or both. Implemented locally through air district partnerships, this program began with participation of 15 air districts and has now grown to include all 35 air districts participating in some form. The program has a menu of eligible project types across 8 source categories tailored to support air districts' unique goals and priorities. CARB monitors air district programs to ensure that participating districts conduct their programs consistent with the criteria and guidelines. Federal clean air laws require areas with unhealthy levels of ozone, inhalable particulate matter, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and sulfur dioxide to develop plans known as State Implementation Plans, or SIPs. SIPs are comprehensive plans that describe how an area will attain national ambient air quality standards. The Carl Moyer Program ensures that emission reductions that it achieves are SIP creditable by adhering to 4 key principles. Surplus. Emission reductions must either be early, extra, or both when applicable regulations are accounted for. Permanent. The emission reductions achieved by a project must be long-term. Quantifiable. Emission reductions achieved must be able to be quantified, and they also must be enforceable. The air districts ensure that projects meet the required criteria. The program would not be successful without CARB's partnership with the air districts. Since the program's inception, over $1.5 billion have been invested in technologies that provide criteria and toxic emission reductions. The 5 air districts subject to environmental justice community investment requirements have collectively exceeded the target of investment and spent over $500 million on their environmental justice communities. As of 2024, the Moyer Program has cleaned up over 72,000 engines and reduced ozone precursors by over 200,000 tons and particulates by over 7,400 tons. The Carl Moyer Program funds a wide variety of equipment and vehicles. From lawnmowers to locomotives and everything in between, the program will fund on-road heavy-duty trucks, off-road diesel and spark-ignited equipment, stationary and portable agriculture equipment, locomotives, marine vessels, lawn and garden equipment, and infrastructure. And to conclude the overview, we would like to do our second poll to find out how familiar are you with the Carl Moyer program? Are you very familiar? Somewhat familiar? Have you heard of it but not quite sure how it works? Or are you totally new to the program? We'll start the poll now and allow about a minute for responses to it. All right, results are rushing in. We're about at the 30-second mark, so we'll give it just a little bit longer, but looks like most of the results flooded in almost immediately. So thank you all for your participation on that. It looks like they've maybe slowed up. So let's go ahead and share the results. And it looks like many of you are at least somewhat, if not very familiar with the program already. And however, there's about 30% of you that are maybe a little less sure of how it works or totally new to it. That's great. We welcome everyone in all their familiarity and very excited to be introducing those that are new to the program to the program. And with that, we can stop sharing the results at this time, and we'll go on to the next slide. And here I'm going to discuss the structure of the guidelines. The Carl Moyer Program guidelines are currently organized into two volumes. Volume 1 is the foundation of the program and is organized into 10 chapters followed by appendices. Each chapter is dedicated to a specific source category or topic and provides guidance on program implementation. The appendices house information useful for program implementation, including grant and emission reduction calculations and methodologies. Volume 2 of the Carl Moyer Program Guidelines contains standalone programs with their own sets of guidelines. We currently have two voucher incentive programs, also known as VIP. These are the on-road and off-road VIP programs. The on-road voucher incentive program is a standalone program for small fleet owners of 20 vehicles or less. It is subject to the administration processes, cost-effectiveness limits, and emission reduction calculation methodologies of the Carl Moyer Program guidelines as well. It provides a streamlined approach to reduce emissions by replacing existing high-polluting vehicles with newer zero-emission vehicles. Real emission benefits are achieved by retiring the high-polluting vehicle earlier than would have been expected through normal attrition or by regulation. Off-road voucher incentive program provides a streamlined approach to reduce emissions by replacing existing high-polluting equipment with newer, lower emission equipment. The off-road VIP provides real emission benefits by retiring the high-polluting equipment earlier than would have been expected through normal attrition or by regulation. The Agricultural Assistance Program allows air districts to use their AB 923 funds, also known as $2 DMV funds, which are non-Carl Moyer funds administered through the Carl Moyer Program. These funds can be used for previously unregulated equipment for agricultural sources. Slide. Over the last few years, we've heard the feedback. We've heard that incentive programs can sometimes be difficult to navigate. We have also heard that adopting the new technology can be risky and that we need more flexibility across sectors to help folks adopt the new technology. And we have responded to the feedback with multiple changes in our program guidelines. In 2024, we did our first comprehensive guideline update since 2017. With these changes approved by the board, we were able to update our program administration to reflect the air district's added responsibilities and policy changes. We've increased opportunities and flexibilities for zero-emission technology and aligned ourselves with the farmer program for off-road agricultural projects. We also made more recent updates to the guidelines. These changes are not yet finalized, but in 2025, we made changes to better align our program with the Clean Cars for All program And earlier this year, we made changes to multiple chapters in response to EPA waivers. And this leads me to discuss the Drive Forward initiative and how the Carl Moyer program fits within it. Despite federal actions targeting 3 of our Clean Air Act waivers, California is not backing down from its goals to protect public health. In addition to pursuing legal actions challenging the federal resolutions that disapproved 3 waiver actions, we are pursuing every available avenue to advance clean technologies and achieve the emission reductions California needs to protect the health and welfare of its residents. This slide provides a brief overview of what led CARB to create the Drive Forward initiative. Executive Order N-27-25. On June 12th, Governor Newsom signed Executive Order N-27-25, reaffirming California's commitment to deploy zero-emission vehicle technologies to improve air quality, especially in communities disproportionately impacted by pollution. It directs the California Air Resources Board to develop new regulations consistent with state and federal law that reduce emissions of greenhouse gases, criteria pollutants, and toxics. It also directed agencies to report to Governor Newsom with additional recommended actions to support zero-emission vehicle market development. ZEV Forward. In response to the governor's executive order, CARB launched the ZEV Forward initiative, a collaborative effort between the public and state government to emphasize that a strong zero-emission vehicle market is essential to meeting California's clean air goals. CARB staff organized the ZEV Forward dialogue sessions, bringing together expertise from the public, industry, and multiple state agencies. These sessions provided an opportunity to exchange ideas, identify challenges, and explore ways to advance clean vehicle technology together. Report to the governor. The ZEV Forward effort informed the recommendation report that was submitted to Governor Newsom and published on CARB's ZEV Forward webpage on August 19, 2025. The report focused on recommendations in 6 areas: private investment, incentives, infrastructure, fuel pricing, regulations, and procurement of ZEVs by state and local government fleets, and included recommended actions to further light, medium, and heavy-duty ZEV adoption. Drive Forward. CARB initiative aims to continue the state's commitment to public health, encompasses CARB's regulatory efforts, ZEV market outreach and support, collaboration, and incentives. Building on the foundation established through ZEV Forward, and in response to the directives of the executive order, CARB launched the Drive Forward initiative. So what are the changes being considered for 2026, and how do they fit into the Drive Forward initiative? The changes being considered for the 2026 guideline update are the reintroduction of the new purchase project type. These projects would be limited to zero-emission technologies, the revamping of Volume 2, and the general programmatic improvements, clarifications, and updates. These proposed changes would drive us forward by advancing clean technology in the state and streamlining the implementation of incentives, which is a key strategy of Drive Forward. Before we get into the details of the changes being considered, we would like to conduct our third poll. What do you see the most reluctance to adopt zero-emission technology? Is it heavy-duty trucks, agricultural equipment, construction or off-road equipment, marine or locomotive? Is it infrastructure access that's the limiting factor? Or is it the cost, insurance, and financing that causes reluctance? We understand that there may be more than one answer to this question, but please choose the answer that most strongly resonates with you. We will start the poll at this time and allow about 1 minute for responses to it. All right, seeing the results come in. Approaching about the 30-second mark. We'll give it a little bit longer. And we're at 1 minute now. I think we can go ahead and share the results. And it looks like the concerns maybe are pretty well distributed amongst the what we've listed here. We're seeing between 10 and 20% for results and distribution, and it seems like maybe it's a little bit of everything is what I'm taking away from the results here. And with that, we can maybe stop sharing the results at this time and move forward to the next slide, which is us going to discuss the new purchase projects. New purchase projects, also called fleet expansion, do not require an engine to scrap. We called it a reintroduction earlier because it used to be an eligible project type up until the publication of a 2017 Carl Moyer Program guidelines, where it was removed due to SIP creditability concerns. Previously, new purchase focused incentives towards heavy-duty on-road vehicles. However, what we are considering is a bit different than how it used to be. We are considering new purchase projects focused solely towards zero-emission technologies in this iteration of it. These projects would likely have a lower grant amount when compared to their scrap and replace counterparts, as there will be no scrap component. We believe that a new purchase option for zero-emission equipment will help lower the barrier to entry for folks that are interested in converting or adding zero-emission technology to their fleets. And with that, we would want to tee up a discussion question for later. What concerns or opportunities do you see with new purchase? The discussion won't be until the end of a presentation, but we want folks to keep this in mind as it's one of the changes we're specifically soliciting feedback on. And now to cover the changes being considered for Volume 2. So why revamp Volume 2? Well, both on-road and off-road VIP aren't widely utilized. Additionally, we've heard it can be a little bit cumbersome at times to navigate. Additionally, the eligibility rules and grant amounts are out of date. So to improve usability of Volume 2, we're considering how we could simplify the language and formatting for easier understanding, include board payment pathways and flexibilities by introducing rebate and cash-only options. Cash-only options would be limited to projects that are scrap-only. We would also move existing voucher programs from Volume 1 to Volume 2. And last, we would expand eligibility to more equipment types and fleets. For example, we no longer limit to small on-road fleets. We'd add off-road equipment beyond tractors, and we'd include light-duty options. And with those considerations presented, we would like to conduct our final poll. What would make incentive programs easier to use? Is it clear guidance, faster processing, more eligible equipment, better outreach and assistance, or predictable funding timelines? Again, we understand there may be more than one answer to this question, so just please choose the one that most strongly resonates with you. We'll start the poll at this time and allow about a minute for responses. All right, seeing lots of answers trickle in. About 30 seconds have passed. We'll give it about another 30. Okay, it looks like we're at a minute and the answers have sort of capped out. Let's go ahead and share the results. And looks like more eligible equipment is the leading response, and clear guidance being second place. However, looks like there are folks that would like to see improvements to all the other categories as well. Thanks again for your input. This is all very helpful for us to be able to take back. Let's go ahead and stop sharing results at this time. And for our next steps, we'll go over some of our engagement opportunities. On the slide, you will see that there will be additional workshops after today's with expected board consideration in November of 2026. If you want to provide us commentary outside these workshops, the next slide will show our contact information. And here is our contact information. Again, my name is Josh Simmons, and I will be the lead staff through this process. My manager overseeing this effort is Sandra Nguyen, and you can always reach out to us using the Moyer Help inbox. Also on this slide is a list of our source category experts. They will be assisting with the discussion portion of this meeting. We will now jump into the discussion and Q&A, which are kicking off right now. Your comments will help shape the final guidelines. No technical expertise is required, and your lived experience matters. Please share your perspective and help us make guidelines that work well for everyone. We want to know your thoughts on the proposed changes that we have specifically mentioned, but please don't feel limited providing feedback on just that. We're open to any and all of your feedback and thoughts that you may have on our program. Now we will take questions, suggestions, and comments. We welcome your feedback on the information we have presented today. Please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature or type your questions in the Q&A. We'll take questions one at a time in the order in which they were received. I'll now turn it over to Wasim Ali to begin the Q&A session.
Thank you, Josh. We'll
Thanks.
start off with the folks that have their hands raised. So what I'll do is I'll ask you to unmute yourself. And after you are asked to unmute yourself, please state your name and your affiliation. And then you can ask your question or make your comment. And then after we've gone through all the raised hands, then we'll go over the folks that have their questions typed up. The first person I'm going to call on is Nick Blair. Nick, please unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation and go ahead and make your comment or ask your question.
Yeah, good afternoon. Nick Blair with the Association of California Water Agencies. In case you're not familiar, we're a association that represents about 470 public water agencies throughout the state of California, which accounts for about 90% of the water delivered to cities, towns, farms, businesses throughout the state. So my question here, and I kind of brought this up this morning at the CARB board meeting. Is there any intention or possibility of expanding eligibility for public agencies that are seeking to comply with the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule? And the reason I bring this up, I've been working on ACF for many years at this point, and in all of that, I've always tried to encourage my member agencies to look at opportunities to help with compliance. So the various resources CARB has. And staff has, rightly pointed me to resources like the Carl Moyer Program. One of the challenges that my members find is that oftentimes the Carl Moyer incentives that are available are only really available to you if you're already exceeding compliance. And for a lot of them, they're just getting underway. So they're trying to comply with the 50% requirement that we currently have and that will extend to 2030 now, thanks to recent amendments. But it remains challenging because zero emission vehicles are more expensive up front than a number of internal combustion vehicles are. And that's a challenge for them because they have limited budget to go and do that. And the feedback that I think I've gotten is that a lot of times and within the guidelines of this program, you're not able to use it for the sake of compliance. You need to be able to show that you're already in compliance, and this is going above and beyond. So I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but I'm just trying to give a sense of what I'm asking here. And is there the ability to look within the guidelines to give more preference or ability to these agencies that are working as hard as they can to comply, but have limited dollars to do so.
Thank you, Nick. That's a really thoughtful and very good feedback and question. Um, Let me bring in our source category expert to help since you mentioned ACF specifically. Yadir, are you available to also chime in on this particular question?
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I think in terms of meeting compliance, or rather like applicable compliance requirements for uh, grant eligibility under the Moyer program, like that's always been a core tenet of the program since its inception, like going way back. So we certainly recognize that state and local governments may not have the same amount of resources as, these larger private fleets that may be able to invest in these more advanced technology. And as observed with the way ACF is going and how SLG is still subject to these ZE requirements, purchase requirements. We do recognize the challenge with that, and it's something that we'll take under consideration. But as far as emission reductions being subcreditable and going above and beyond what's required, like that's a statutory requirement which we cannot go away from, and that's just really that's just to maintain the integrity of the program. So we understand the plight of our local agencies, and we'll continue to work with them to try to be as flexible as possible as far as trying to help for project eligibility and so on.
Thank you, Yadir and Josh. Next question, I'm going to allow Lynette Sapienza. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Lynette Sapienza with Dome Innovation Partnership. And we work with a lot of small and medium businesses in California and other places and helping them navigate a lot of these programs. So some of the comments I wanted to make was regarding some things that would really help small and medium-sized fleets as you guys are revamping this program. These fleets make up around 99% of the fleets in California. And, to meet these goals of cleaner air, et cetera, you need them, and it benefits the communities and everything else they work in. And there's a few things they really need that we would like you guys to consider as you move forward with this. One of those is really looking at the vehicles they need to start entering this market. Many of them want to get in. It is risky and harder for them. So these Class 2B, particularly pickup trucks, but all 2B, there's vans in there, and Class 3 are really beneficial to them. And generally, once they get into that first step and see the benefits and experience it, then they want to keep converting. But they need to get in there, and they're not companies that typically are going to start out in a Class 4 or 5 vehicle. They need to start off smaller. And a lot of them work in our disadvantaged communities. So by allowing them to get into these programs, it really helps those communities as well. And some other things is to be competitive for them. It would really help to have some money carved out. They don't have staffs of people like larger companies do to sit around filling these out. So having some set aside for them could be really helpful for them to be able to participate in the programs, to have the time to get help to do that, and to keep things simple for them too. Some of these programs have very complicated packages or emissions calculations, et cetera, that when you're the person who's running the business, driving the truck, managing everything, that's hard. And you may not have the staff or the resources to do something super complicated, yet you do want to enter into this zero emissions market. It is good for their businesses, it's good for their communities, etc. So Those are some of the things we would like you guys to consider as you're advancing this program and making some changes. And I appreciate the time to comment on that.
Thank you, Lynette. Your feedback's really helpful. And these are definitely things that we can consider as we develop this particular guideline update.
All right, thank you.
Next up, we have Terry. Terry, please unmute yourself and go ahead. Terry, are you able to ask your question or comment? Well, we can come back to Terry. Let me go to next up. We want to go to Daniela. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, does it work?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Daniela Nestace and Peggy Mock. I'm with UC Riverside. We have the research station here. It's adjacent to some of your CARB facilities. We have agricultural equipment. When I was listening, I joined a bit late. It sounds like we're talking about zero emission, transitioning to zero emission. Are the diesel tractors still eligible?
So our agricultural projects point to the farmer guidelines now, but we're not eliminating combustion options from the guidelines. We're just including a new purchase options for zero emission options. Hopefully that helps clarify.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're going to have Lisa. Lisa, are you able to unmute yourself? Maybe we can come back to Lisa as well. Let me go to Ryan. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. This is Ryan Canny with Clean Energy. Really helpful presentation. Thanks for taking the time to do that. I wanted to ask about 2 points. I noticed specifically that the slides focus on ZEVs only, heavy-duty ZEVs only, especially slides 18, 19, and 22. And the drive forward concept that was discussed back on December 3rd in the workshop encouraged early production of ultra low NOx engines and ZEVs. So I was wondering why, one, that is not included low NOx trucks. I think also it's important that this does include the cleanest available low NOx engines because of what happened with the federal activity. It necessitates the need for both, as well as our non-attainment status, NOx emissions, and of course the threat to federal transportation dollars of $75 million if we don't meet attainment. And also, of course, the need for a near-term focus for emission reductions. So that's my first point. And my second point is that fleets are hesitant to adopt cleaner trucks because of scrappage. I know the need for the policy reason, but in the real world, the business case, it's just not practical and not useful because it reduces participation, limits project size, and undermines cost effectiveness by forcing fleets to destroy usable assets as a condition of funding. So with that in mind, I also would recommend perhaps a focus on low NOx trucks and maybe even a subgroup where the industry can actually provide some feedback on how to reduce the barriers for adoption, because this is about near-term reduction of emissions, and we're just not getting those because of the barriers of Carl Moyer. So I did just want to make those points. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ryan, and thank you for your feedback and your 2 points. I think that a lot of a reason for the focus on zero emission for the new purchase aspect, and again, I just want to note that for scrap and replace, low NOx trucks are still eligible. The focus on zero emission has to do with surplus and our statutory requirement to be surplus, and that's the angle for it is its simplicity for implementation as well, because we know that zero emission technology for a new purchase environment is surplus across the board. Combustion engines, however, are still eligible Similar to like some of the responses we gave earlier, as long as fleets are, meeting compliance requirements, it can still be an eligible project type.
Thank you, Josh. I'm gonna see if I can have Ryan or Terry, if they can unmute themselves. They may not. And if you guys are having issues unmuting yourself, asking your question, please type it in and we'll get it read and get the question answered. For now, I'm going to jump to the questions that are typed in. First one's going to be from Sterling Ross. Where does the majority of program funding come from?
Well, so program funding is coming from tire fees and smog abatement fees primarily, and we're part of the Air Pollution Control Fund.
Thank you for that. The next one we have typed is from Nathan Berger. No question or need to share with the group, but I'm hopeful that any changes to program where eligibility expanded beyond small fleet doesn't push the little guy out from receiving funds due to the big guys getting there first. Thank you.
And thanks, Nathan. That's good feedback. We definitely don't want to exclude small businesses or small fleets as part of the changes that we're making.
The next question that we have typed is from Connor Held. How do you plan on mitigating EV dealers from artificially where did this question go? It got adjusted. Well, let me go to the next one. Here it is. How do you plan on mitigating EV dealers from artificially inflating prices to absorb funding intended for end users? See if anyone from panelists.
Yeah, I see. Connor, would you be able to elaborate on the end portion of that a little bit for me? I understand the concern for, trying to prevent artificially inflating prices, but just wanted to make sure that understanding like who, like just on the fleet side.
Well, Connor can type more information or possibly raise his hand,
Yeah.
and we'll go to the next question or
Yeah.
comment.
I mean, I can answer generally speaking on some safeguards in the Moyer program, though. We do tend to put cost caps like for on-road vehicles, and we have upper limits on what percentage of the vehicle costs or any of the equipment costs that we're willing to pay. Additionally, projects have to be bound by cost effectiveness. So if you're depending on how the grant calculation shakes up, the grant amount is limited, so that should reduce the reduce the need, I guess, to artificially inflate because the grant amounts are limited by other means. So hopefully that answers your question, Connor. But if for some reason it doesn't, like, please feel free to come back to the Q&A or raise your hand.
Next question we have from Ben Smith. It is my understanding that acceptance of a Carl Moyer award requires destruction of the previous equipment. If award amounts are not larger than auction value, then it is not worth it from a finance perspective. Secondly, early estimates of potential award amount would be helpful since budgeting and procurement timelines are very long.
Thank you, Ben. That's good feedback. It sounds like just addressing the second part first. Just faster processing is like one of the poll questions that we heard before, or like clear funding timelines. That's kind of some of the feedback that I'm hearing from your comments here. And as far as grant amounts go, it's similar to my previous response. Like we do have requirements and caps that are in place. However, I could see there being options potentially for this could be a good opportunity for those that want to participate in the considered new purchase project type where scrapping wouldn't be a requirement.
Thank you, Josh. Next, we have two questions from Conrad Powalski. First question is, came on late to the presentation. Hopefully you're adding CNG trucks the electric program does not handle to need since we have equipment on the truck that reduce the charge life significantly?
So CNG trucks are eligible in the guidelines currently for our scrap and replace projects.
And his second question, Josh, was, is HVIP funding going to be able to piggyback on the Carl Moyer program in this round?
I think any questions regarding HVIP will have to defer at this time. We could provide links to the HVIP website, though.
Thank you. And next question from Terry Maines. He's with Orange EV. In the previous iteration of the new purchase option, we understood that only on-road vehicles were eligible. Please provide a few examples of non-on-road equipment that will be eligible this time. For example, we see a picture of a semi cab and a terminal truck. What else will be eligible?
So, Terry, we're considering many options at this time, and so, like you mentioned, terminal trucks, that's under consideration. We could consider other equipment types as well, like forklifts. Really, if it's zero emission, I think it could be considered in the off-road space. If you have additional feedback or would like to see specific equipment types too, like we'd love to hear it or see it written in the Q&A.
Perfect. We have a few more hands raised, so I'm going to try to go back to Lisa McGee and see if you are able to unmute yourself. If not, I would say just type your question in the question and answer, and we'll get that read. The next hand up is Ryan Kenny. And Ryan, I'm gonna also, I think you might be having. Are you able to unmute yourself, Ryan?
I am. I already went, so I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Then next up we have Matt Sharp. Matt, go ahead. Are you able to unmute yourself?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Fantastic. Good afternoon. Thanks. Really appreciate you guys throwing a flare up on this as we're leading into some potential changes. I was a little late, and so I just caught the tail end of the voucher incentive program slide. And what made me think about it was the question regarding small fleets and their ability to compete within Carl Moyer against some of the larger fleets. Is there any thoughts being put to a modification of the existing VIP program under Carl Moyer to change the fleet size, or the 10 or fewer still the threshold? Or are y'all looking for suggestions that to maybe change it further here right now?
So currently the threshold is 20 vehicles or fewer. But one of the considerations that we mentioned is removing that limiter on for the VIP program. However, small fleets and businesses are definitely able to participate in the program still, and ultimately air districts have a discretion to choose their projects, and that's how the program is dictated by statute. Not sure if that answers your question, Matt.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I can appreciate that. I think the spirit of VIP has always been, and my apologies for confusing the old standard. I'm glad that we kind of have one definition across the different programs of 20 or fewer being that threshold. I believe it's also $15 million in annual average revenue. So I think that there's always a good opportunity there. I mean, the one positive thing, especially with VIP for the diesel program back in the day, was there was a priority for those VIP fleets that were able to get in. There was a separate pot of funding. I think fleets of 20 or fewer, especially as the funding amounts are higher, provides a little bit more opportunity. So from our perspective, from my perspective, I would encourage that the VIP program maintains its existing eligibility threshold. But for the remainder of Carl Moyer, I think what would be beneficial to look at is increasing the total amount that's eligible to be funded under the program to include on Class 8, at least to include FET, to have that be added into the percentage requirement. I understand the state tax is a little bit of a different consideration. But I think that looking at that or increasing the percentage to include FET would get more people into the program. And then just on that note as well, will leasing be considered for these Class 8 projects for a company that would be working with a fleet to find vehicles that they would turn in as baseline scrap vehicles to then enter into something like a track lease or a FMV lease or an operating lease with the leasing company? HFIP, I know you guys can't answer HFIP questions, but just food for thought. HFIP did change their guidelines to allow for it, and it really helps fleets manage that cash flow when we're talking about pieces of equipment, especially in the Class 8 category that are multiples of hundred thousands of dollars. So I think that that's something to consider. If it's not already there already, I apologize. I don't recall if that had been considered and rejected or had been included. And if so, I would also encourage folks to chat with some of the leasing entities that participate in the CalCap program or the Zero Emissions Loan Program through either SoCal Edison or through the Treasurer's Office. Some good opportunity there. I think leasing is a great pathway for fleets to, again, manage that cash flow as opposed to paying on a full transaction for purchase price. So some food for thought.
Thank you, Matt. That's really appreciated, the food for thought there. Just want to give source category expert Yadir an opportunity to chime in if he has anything he'd like to add, because I believe that we do offer some leasing options in the current guidelines, but I'll defer to Yadir for this.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, Matt, and we thank you for joining the call and giving your feedback. As far as I think first to go back to your point about on-road VIP being a traditionally small fleet program. So in our last 2024 guidelines, like as Josh alluded to, we did expand the fleet size scope a little bit more to 20 vehicles. However, we do have a voucher cap in place for 10 ZE truck replacements. So anyone participating in VIP is limited to 10 voucher replacements per year. So that, in a sense, kind of levels the playing field for small fleets and large fleets, because as we know, larger fleets tend to have a lot more resources when it comes to applying for incentives and navigating that space in general. So we certainly appreciate that. And of course, in this coming update, that's not something that's set in stone. We'll look at that. And as far as your comment regarding FET, federal excise taxes, I believe taxes are already included as an eligible cost for both Chapter 4 and VIP. We don't necessarily specify whether that's sales, state, or federal taxes. So perhaps we can look to clarify that a little bit further with our public process. So we thank you for highlighting that specifically. And lastly, I think you mentioned adjusting the percentage as far as eligible vehicle costs, and that's something that we can certainly consider that right now. But as it is now, I think generally small fleets are eligible for up to 80% of the vehicle costs, and larger fleets are limited to 50% of the vehicle costs. And of course, what's an eligible cost is described in our guidelines. So yeah, that's something that we can look a little bit further if we need to tweak that a little bit more in order to coax more participation. I think that addresses your comments and questions. But please
It does. Just the one outstanding would be the question about some more specifics on lease, and I can take a look at the guidelines.
So right now in the contract route, leasing is limited to the contract route in our Chapter 4 Carl Moyer Program guidelines. So if it's a mechanism that's easily implementable, that's something that we can look into in Volume 2. Right now, Volume 2, we're exploring quite a few options. So we appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Okay, great. And just I don't want to usurp other people's time here, but just real quick on the VIP, and just for purposes of clarity here, if you have less than 20 trucks, 20 or fewer trucks at time of application, and you're applying for 10, it's only going to be considered your fleet size at time of application, correct? I mean, if you're scrapping 10 trucks and bringing 10 more trucks in, you're going to be right at 20 at that point in time. So it's, I guess, just to clarify again, because it's a scrap and replace, makes it a little bit more clear that you're replacing 10, so you're going to maintain that threshold.
I believe that's a fair assessment. I think right now that's how the air districts essentially implement their program based on the documentation that's provided on the application, right? So that's what they use to evaluate the potential grant awards. So especially in the on-road space, things are always dynamic in flux, whether that's like fleet count or even compliance issues, right? So we do ask fleets to maintain compliance throughout their contract periods as well as voucher periods. So we do the best we could as far as like having documentation requirements in place to ensure that what they're in fact eligible for funding is consistent with documentation provided. So thanks for that comment.
Sure. And just as the costs come down of zero emissions vehicles, especially in the future, having a fixed amount with that capped threshold, I think just some true clarity is going to be helpful about what those eligible costs truly are. That'd be helpful. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks,
Thank you,
Yadir,
next up, I'm going to allow Laura to unmute herself. Please state your full name and affiliation. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Laura Hinkles. I am the grant supervisor with Clean Energy. I have a few comments, they're not really questions. The first being, first of all, thank you for letting us all have input on, what you guys are all doing over there. We appreciate it. I wanted to raise a question or an issue that we're seeing coming up in the field on how the 0.05 low NOx is actually being, I'll say, treated. On paper, through the guidelines with CARB, we know that 0.05 is part of it. It's Chapter 4, Table 4.5 allows $80,000 for low NOx. But when it really comes down to applying for the grants, the low NOx is not being awarded money. So I did go through this with South Coast Air Quality, and I did get them to put at least put the low NOx onto the guidelines, but it really isn't being looked at. So I would love to see that changed. And maybe, I don't know, somebody else brought up having maybe a set aside for low NOx. Most of the programs in other states do allow it. Even the FTA for the buses and bus facilities allows low NOx. So I'd like to see that changed. And then on the scrappage, that's also something that for especially smaller fleets that don't have, a lot of staff or no staff, the scrappage requirement on the grants is really daunting. My job here is to help those fleets get the grants done, but for them, it's really difficult. It could be something as simple as, the engine tag is something that it's old. It's so old on the truck that we can't get the information, that we can't get the photos. And sometimes the fleets get discouraged and they give up, or we can't meet the deadline because of, something as small as that. Among other operational issues they might have, as far as scrappage goes, sometimes the lag time between getting the funds and scrapping the truck. So there's just a lot of issues, I think, with the scrappage. I understand the reason why it's in place, though. But again, maybe really seriously giving that a look would be something very beneficial. And I work with a lot of fleets here in California, small and large, but that scrappage requirement is tough.
So, Laura, that's definitely good feedback for us to hear. As far as the scrappage requirements being difficult to meet, it sounds like it's kind of, but like the administrative side of it, like just getting all the details and everything in a timely fashion, that's the challenge.
Well, for me as the grants writer here, that is the challenge. I know though and I don't know this site as well, but for the fleets themselves, maybe they don't have maybe they want 10 trucks and they only really have 5 that need to be retired. So it might make them take equipment out early. It might, again, as far as getting the funding, there might be a gap in between, them disposing of the engine, all those kinds of things too. So I think there's definitely issues with the complexity of getting that done on paper, but on the back end at the fleet too.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, no, that's helpful feedback for us to hear.
Thank you.
Next up, Lisa, are you able to unmute yourself now? Lisa McGee, it shows that your mic is, you have access to the mic now.
Yeah. Why am I having
Yeah, I think you're signed on twice. That's why. Let me here mute, make sure everyone else is muted.
Am I good now? I don't see myself. Maybe I'll go out and come back in.
Okay, sounds good. We'll try it one more time. In the meantime, Vince, did you want to go ahead? State your full name and affiliation. Go ahead and make your comment or question.
Laura Sella, Inland Kenworth. When BEV units don't work for the application for whatever reasons, what about somebody had mentioned that CNG is a potential? Where do we find that information through the Moyer program?
Yeah. Yadir, would you like to field this question?
Sure. So what was the question exactly?
So in some applications, battery electric doesn't work. So through the Moyer program, you guys have said that CNG is an option. Where do we find the information for that option for grants?
Right. Okay. So unlike HVIP, we don't necessarily provide like a vehicle catalog of eligible vehicle types, right? All we really do in terms of eligible vehicle categories in the guidance is really just kind of name like the specific like vocation type, like what regulations they're subject to, and we provide some guidance as far as like what would be considered surplus to what they're required to comply with. And as far as like CNG goes, they would, depending on like the application, whether it's like refuse trucks or just a commercial cargo hauling truck, those ones would be eligible for Moyer funding consideration, so long as they meet surplus requirements, which is basically if they can demonstrate that they're cleaner than what they're required to meet in terms of regulation, then they're eligible for funding consideration. And as far as like those funding caps goes for like those optionally certified standards, we do have a funding table in Chapter 4, which describes funding caps depending on weight classes and standards. I think as far as like, yeah, I would just defer to like the existing language that we have right now in the guidance as far as what those CNG vehicles may be eligible up to.
The
So,
other thing. Oh,
so
sorry.
what you're saying, you're basically saying go read your Chapter 4 and funding considerations for CNG.
Well, what I was going to add is that I would also recommend reaching out to the air, like your local air district. Basically, they implement the programs, and their solicitation should also help make clear like what they're looking for at that time.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if we can. Let's see, Lisa, are you able to unmute yourself now? Let's see if you have an echo.
I think I got it together now. Thank you for the patience.
Perfect. No
And
problem.
and circling back so many times, I did have a double entry, didn't know it. So my statement is, first of all, just to thank the openness. I think it really does need to be emphasized if we're going to address the executive order from June of 2025, and which really does allow us to revamp, readdress the necessary requirements associated with funding that becomes an obstacle even if you give the truck away as a Class A truck, right? You still have a 23% burden for a small fleet. You got 12% federal excise tax. You've got no tax incentives anymore, and you have a 10% or higher sales tax, and then you still have an average of 1% on the DMV fees, 23% for one truck, right? So it's just not possible. These guys can't take the risk associated around scrapping. It's really a big burden. Sometimes all they have is one truck. And I think that we really know we've got enough data that's been collected over 10 plus years. There's been a lot of OEMs coming and going and coming and going, right? We can't expect someone to take on without reliability to consistently every day be on the road and do their job with their eyes closed to know whether this really works and whether the OEM is going to be around, whether there's services beyond one garage, which is all the program requires today, is just for a new OEM to have one garage. It's not good enough. Our state's huge. So I think it's necessary we find some way for the small fleets, independent owner operators, drayage operators. We have 250,000 registered Class 8 trucks in the state. 60% of them are aged out. I think focusing on the small fleet, who's a lot of them, and the aging of each of those trucks and prioritize those aged trucks when they are interested in an opportunity. I don't know what that means yet, but one of my thoughts is to provide a rental program within this budget somehow, some way. After they do a rental, right, and they like it, they have X amount of time to purchase a truck with a rebate, right? And that's kind of where I think the stick and the carrot needs to come, right? Because these guys have interest, but they can't take the risk, right? We can't even give the trucks to them, right, without being honest with ourselves, knowing that we don't know what we don't know. Will this company be around? Will they get the service they need? Are there parts on the shelves? The answer is most of the time no. And so my hopes is that we reduce the burden 100% from scrapping right now, revamp this and really dig deeper into what kind of solutions we can invent to make sure we're getting the decarbonization goals with the aged out trucks. Because if we don't do it, those aged out trucks still exist on the road. I also think that we need to have definitely a faster turnaround upon delivery. I think what these programs have proven also with the administrative tasks and then the payment processes that you got to deliver a truck, you got to give them titles to the truck, you got to give them keys to the trucks, and the dealers are left with all the burden and could be months, sometimes years, and once in a while to be paid for a truck, right? I think that's leaving a lot of entities in the commercial dealer space not comfortable because they can't afford to participate, so they can't be your partner. So we're still not scaled in any way, shape, or form, right? Until we get scalability, you're never going to have affordability. So the faster turnaround is necessary. We're going to have to give up some of, I know we've got a bunch of data that has proven that people are taking advantage in fraudulent ways. I think there's ways to go about this better, but I think time kills all deals. The administrative process is so time consuming, time kills all deals. And anytime you make it overwhelming for them, the same thing happens, right? The interest just goes south. I think you got a lot of stakeholders that are invested in this technology, want to move it forward, are willing to do whatever they can do. But I don't think the access to the agencies is truly there, right? We have these public meetings, and I know that they're timed, and it's not every OEM is going to open up and speak openly. It's not their nature or their ability to do so. I just think finding a back end way to get further, faster, and more outreach to figure that out. Going on to, I think also dealers need to prove themselves better. We've done a bunch of OEM sales for dealerships. You can't be everything to this technology, right? The technology is expensive to build and produce. You need to have the parts and services. So I think finding a way is, are you really able to serve that truck is what a dealer's supposed to do, right? And we haven't done that yet. We really haven't. And let me see what other provisions associated around stacking have to change. The Invest Clean, the VW, the moment you stack it with CARB, you're stuck at 90% and all your eligible costs don't get included. It doesn't matter how you shape it, move it, the moment you stack with HVIP, which is a beautiful program, doesn't work for the small fleets on Class 8 trucks. You still have a 10%, you still have all the 23% burden, you still have insurance, which is tied to the value of the truck and the repeated renewal registration. So it's a burden. And I just don't think we're getting there. And then financing. These guys are never going to get financed. It's hard, right? And so we have so many burdens and so many challenges to make it happen for the small fleet. So I think we do need to take a deeper dive, and this is a great approach you guys are taking. I think on the definition of small, I think it's good. I think what's confusing and difficult is that CARB has got this strict rule on a definition of 20, but the small guy that's already used 5 can't use any more than a standard fleet for funding. So it doesn't even make sense, right? You got eligibility, but the eligibility can't be used if you're over 6 ever in a lifetime. And many of these guys have ended up with stranded assets. That truck doesn't exist even though they bought one. So I'm not sure that that's going in the right direction for true ZEV adoption and a flexibility for consideration, because the OEMs still need to sell those trucks if they've got them available. They need those parties that are interested no matter what. I got maybe one more to add here, which is stocking I just talked about. I think that was the definition of small fleets. I think the definition of small fleets in some way should be tied to the age of that truck. And I think that was really it, but I'm looking forward to seeing what really can happen with eligible cost items for small fleets. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was a lot of really good feedback and food for thought for us to take back as we develop these guidelines and dive into how we can reduce some of the burden and make some of these projects go a little more smoothly.
Thank you, Josh. Some folks have typed in their questions, but they also raised their hand. We've answered their comments or their questions. So for now, I'm going to go over a few more questions that are typed up here. Rui Zhang was asking, is there a place that I can find in CARB's website for the emission tonnage reductions benefits due to Carl Moyer at different air basin local air district?
At the district level, we do have the Moyer stats published on our webpage. So that would be the link I would probably recommend responding with.
And then Emma Westlake had a comment, forklifts would be great. Then Terry Main commented, great, thanks. We'll be in touch with all sorts of recommendations in the weeks ahead. Nathan Berger had a comment, maybe this isn't a correct form, but when will ZEF regulations be enforced?
Is this question specific to on-road, or is this? Oh, is there? Nope, I see Miriam popping on. Thank you, Miriam.
Hello, my name is Miriam Sandoval. I am the off-road lead for the Carl Moyer program. I believe when you say ZEF regulation, you're referring to the zero-emission forklift regulation. They do have a advisory posted on the zero-emission forklift website. At this time, state and local government fleets are the ones that are having to follow the zero-emission forklift regulation. Per that advisory, private fleets are not required to follow it at this time, but the Moyer program is looking to provide additional incentives for those that are voluntarily following the zero-emission forklift regulation.
Thank you, Mary. Tim Gutzwiller is our 25-year-old diesel forklift eligible for an electric forklift?
Hello, me again. Thank you for your comment, Tim. Diesel forklifts are eligible to be replaced with electric forklifts. However, I do note that you mentioned on there it's 25 years old. Per our guidelines, we have table 5-4 that includes the tier phase out schedule. So depending on the size of your fleet, you'll have a different phase out date. And Moyer, with the 24 updates, we are at 1 year surplus. So that means that as long as you do it 1 year before your compliance date, you are eligible for incentive funding. But please feel free to reach out to me if you would need additional assistance. I could get you in contact with your local air district. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marion. William Mansella, is there timeline flexibilities for local governments that may have longer processes?
I know that we do have some delayed scrapping flexibilities for zero emission projects currently in the 2024 guidelines. Hopefully that answers the questions, but for other timeline flexibilities that you're looking for, like that would be good for us to hear. That's good feedback for us.
And Lisa was able to make her comments, but Lisa, we also received all your comments and questions that you typed as well. So I'm going to skip over those since you were able to make your comments. Steve Chu commented, scrappage can be difficult for companies trying to grow that can't afford to lose any current fleet.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for your comment. Jonathan Sexton, what would be considered surplus standard as of today?
So that depends on the vehicle or the equipment type, the applicable regulations. It's a very it really just depends on the fleet too. So if you have questions on surplus, I would recommend you either reach out to us and we can navigate that, or contact your local air district if you're interested in going through the project with them.
Thank you, Josh. We have two more hands raised. Before I get to those, I want to finish off these two more typed questions or comments. Conrad was asking, following Vince's question, would CNG, if eligible under Carl Moyer, be able to be used beyond 2035 in California?
I'm going to see if Yadir wants to field this question here.
Yeah, okay, so I'm unmuted. Yeah, as far as like, projecting out to 2035 and beyond, like I would just defer to what Josh just described as far as surplus considerations, depending on like the vehicle or equipment type being considered, like the fleet itself, the applicable regulations, like all those play a role in terms of how we determine surplus for the given proposed project. So it's a very open-ended question. I know that we have some goals out there as far as like certain statewide goals. But yeah, I don't think we could really I guess the answer is it just depends on the application, right? So if you need further assistance, please reach out to myself if it's on-road heavy duty related, or if it's another equipment type, we will provide the contact information at the end of the presentation for everybody on this panel for you to reach out to, and we can further assist you in more detail as needed.
Thank you, Yadir. One more comment, Joseph Shanasi. He wrote, for grant writers serving multiple clients across multiple air boards, it would be good to have a list of when Carl Moyer opens and closes across each of the air boards, including the amount of Carl Moyer funds allocated to each air board. As of right now, to get this information, we must sign up for alerts from each of the 35 air boards.
Thanks, Joseph, for your comment. No, that's definitely helpful feedback for us to hear. What I will say is the air districts have the option to implement the programs with their own timelines, and some of them will run year-round solicitations, others run limited windows, and some do things in between. So as far as timing goes amongst the air districts, there's a lot of variety there. And the best The best solution is probably just for wherever the fleet is located is to reach out to your local air district to understand like what their particular program's timing is.
Thank you, Josh. We have two more folks that have raised their hand. I'm going to try to unmute Diane Campbell. Are you able to unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation?
I actually absconded with my mother's iPad. I'm Todd Campbell with Clean Energy. So just for full disclosure, I wanted to thank all of you for holding this timely workshop. I think it's critical to kind of be able to share with you, the trials and tribulations that we've been having with the program. But I also think that right now, where it's kind of a special condition, if you will, let's face it, we are under siege and, basically waging war over our control of mobile sources. And, what I really appreciate about Chris Grundler's Politico interview was when he said, I'm coming out of a retirement not only to save all the achievements I've made or, helped contribute to under my tenure at EPA, but, his main purpose, from what I could tell, was to make sure all the clean tech companies that invested, real capital behind our regulations aren't left out in the lurch. And that doesn't just extend to zero emission, it also extends to clean combustion. And I will tell you, as of, I think, 3 weeks ago, the L9N actually certified to 34 milligrams. In other words, we're already certifying to the 2027 EPA standards, which to me is so important in this space. Right now, people can go out and buy 200 milligram trucks without consequence. It's just a fact. We don't even have optional low NOx standards anymore, according to the federal government, and if they preside. So, if you're a truck company out there making ends meet, I mean, I fully support what Lisa, the commenter Lisa said, I don't know, a couple speakers before. She's totally right on with her comments. We need to make this very easy for folks. So I would encourage CARB to actually consider an emergency measure of taking away the scrappage requirement for a period of time while we're trying to deal with the loss of the omnibus rule. I mean, think if you're the executive officer of the South Coast Air Quality Management District or the San Joaquin Valley APCD or the Bay Area, anywhere that's being highly impacted by trucks, you're helpless to have fleets not buy 200 milligram trucks. We know we can do better. We've proven we can do better. And I think it's deserving of an emergency measure. As Governor Newsom said, the genius of and, not the tyranny of or. I think we really need to think in the and in this time and space, given all the uncertainty that's impacting all clean tech industries, zero emission, near zero emission, all your partners. So I would just ask that when you're updating your program, that you consider these comments. And I'm coming from the heart because I hate to see us lose our ability to reduce emissions in our most impacted communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Yes.
We have one more hand raised, so I'm going to allow William Mansella. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Yep. So, I'm just gonna reiterate a little bit from what I had a question in the Q&A and I wanted to just reiterate a little bit more about that because really I think what we've noticed, me and my team in our fleet from City Sacramento is, we want to push our entire plan is going towards ZEVs, but we have not found the ability to cope with the fact that there's a very limited amount of funding available in our own taxpayer, I guess, budgetary pool. And then on top of that, all these like manufacturers are coming with, I mean, just in the heavy duty side of things, anything above class five is basic, class five, six, seven, eight, whatever. It's all anything electric or hydrogen, it's all in the $500,000 price range, right? Once you get the upfits and all the necessary things on there, you're talking about spending pretty much close to $1 million on vehicles that, we don't know if the manufacturers will last. We don't know if the manufacturers will be forced to produce something else, and then they won't sell the products that they are producing. So right now we've come to a point where right now we're trying to find manufacturers that have proven to work, but everything, and I've talked with people in CARB about this, everything we find is either overpriced and does not meet like the range requirements needed for people to do their jobs, or it works and there's potentially a way that we could get it, but we don't have the funding for it, and there's no programs that CARB gives to help support electrification, or in some cases maybe hydrogen. I mean, we don't have infrastructure for that. But and I've seen this time and time again where a lot of the public fleets are getting huge support even though they're not required to switch, but the local government fleets are not getting really any very limited support. I mean, we have HVIP, which helps, but with the processes that we have, there's been grants that we find we're like, oh, this could work, and then we get to the point where we're trying to apply for it, and we don't have staff that can just take the time off of all the other stuff that they're doing to have the operations keep going, to then say, okay, then we can focus on a grant that we may or may not get the money for because of one requirement here, one requirement there. Maybe the last step, maybe like something down the line that we may not be able to get that one thing down, and then that just destroys every aspect of our plan for getting funding. So I just think CARB should think of better ways to engage local government fleets that are being required to switch over their vehicles, and maybe have a little bit more support on our end too, since I know right now with the manufacturers and the federal government it is a little bit more difficult, and you're kind of putting us on a nails bed here with you have regulations to follow, but you don't really have the support to actually implement any change. It's just kind of each city's doing their own thing, and there's no coherent plan that all of us could follow because we're all different, but there's also no coherent support either.
Definitely. Thank you,
That's it.
William. It's really hearing you loud and clear. It's good feedback for us. We'll definitely take that into consideration as we draft these guidelines.
Josh, I believe we've entered all the folks that had their hands raised. Ash just raised his hand, so Ash, go ahead and mute yourself. And
Good morning or good afternoon. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yes.
yes,
Well, good to see you guys, Wasim and Joshua and Yadir in the background and all other co-op staff. Just want to say, as someone who's worked on Carl Moyer for many years, during when new purchase was an option back then, and then seeing it taken away in 2017, yeah, I'm really happy to see that it's possibly coming back, because with the pool of eligible candidates shrinking because of regulations or just businesses retiring or changing their scope. I think this really expands the pool of candidates that, someone that's considering a new business or expanding their fleet, but they don't really want to get rid of their existing truck, and especially going from diesel or natural gas to a ZE option, there's a lot of transition anxiety, to put it in a way to explain it, for various reasons, other than just financial, which is a major element as well. But my question was, will this new purchase option also be an available category under VIP, or is it going to be only traditional Moyer?
Well, first of all, it's good to hear from you, Ash, and thank you for support of the new purchase. This is a change that right now we're not considering for volume 2 at this moment, but it's something that we could possibly. We're open to
Okay.
feedback.
I think it would be a great option, especially when there's a lot of resistant or not reluctance for people to say, look, what do I do if I have a breakdown? How many days do I have to wait to get that fixed? Especially when it's a technology that I haven't ever worked with. And it's not something they can just call their buddy to come and bring their work truck and fix it on the spot. I think for any size fleet, but specifically for one or two truck owners that, the fleets that have only one or two, for them to give up their livelihood and just transition to something that they've never tried, I think they'd be more willing to do it if they had that option, because it would really give them kind of like a safety net, or something that they can say, okay, if this happens, I have this as a backup. Not that I'm going to rely on that, but it's we all need that in terms of whether it's our vehicles or anything in life, right? Yeah, you need a battery backup for your cell phone. You need you need things. It's personal sense of insurance or assurance that you have a coverage should something go wrong. So I think it would really help out if you guys took that into consideration.
Thank you, Ash. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks a lot.
Lisa McGee also had another comment or question. So Lisa, you are unmuted again. Go ahead.
I do, thank you. So I just wanted to also make sure, I don't know if I addressed this or not, but I had a couple things to address on the guardrails, to make sure that we've got something implemented. We've seen recently an HFIP, and then in the past, in 2024 at the end, and then also in 2018, where the program was shut down specifically just by one OEM's demand. And we implemented a guardrail in 2018 to ensure that there was fairness across the board for all OEMs and stakeholders to have choices, right? Providing choices is part of a program to make sure there's good competition, and good competition, you've got a business model that's moving forward. We've seen recently that was different. I think something needs to be addressed so that we can ensure that all participant stakeholders and OEMs all have a fair shot, and of course customers have choices. So I don't know what the answer is, but whether it's a cap, a guardrail, a set aside, I'm not sure what, but making sure we have choices and predictable continuous funding. I also wanted to address the hydrogen side. So I don't know, have you guys thought about what we can do, right? The hydrogen on the truck side is just now, it's kind of faced its own challenges and never really had much participation overall, but certainly proved itself. I think Nicola did a very good job in terms of proving what was of interest to customers on the long haul Class 8 side. So I'd love to see if we had some dialogue around what should be done for such a nascent technology that's perfect for trucks and the future. It might even go into some of the heavy off-road equipment as well. So I don't know again what the answers are, but I'm hopeful that we could have some more meaningful discussions now that we've got, Hyundai's at the table, and got Symbio and I think some others that could maybe even do a drivetrain as a hydrogen. And expanding the eligibility of equipment, Class 2B light and heavy duty, I think is critical. We run across this at our own dealership, right? What's available. And we've seen not only on the Class 2B side, whether it's Right Drop or others, come and go. And if you look at that list of eligible entities in those classes, we don't have anything. Okay. So my hope is that as we go through this revamping, that we look at the light duty, be flexible in some way, and include shuttles, because shuttles can have upfits on a cargo van, upfitted by a federal motor vehicle carrier OEM that would do the upfits, not a carrier, but an OEM that would do the upfits, right? As long as everything's done legally, we could find solutions. So my hopes is that this program could be part of a solution for that, because we could get rid of other trucks. On the hydrogen side, I just talked about that, if we could just consider additional plus ups. And then also, I have something to kind of share with CARB has allowed the used truck. I know we're not getting much movement on that, but I also want to make sure that we're going beyond what we've done recently on that particular side of used and refurbished vehicles. There are aftermarket certs that CARB has for vehicles that are available, that are zero emission. I'm going to call out Maxwell Vehicles. We've been using them for some time. They've delivered over 100 trucks had zero recalls, zero issues with being able to have a truck brought back or stranded asset. So, it's got a used drivetrain in it from a salvage vehicles, and they're great. They're great solutions. So it's got a CARB cert. Why we're not, again, being more flexible with solutions doesn't make sense when we've got interested buyers and a product that's certainly proven itself. So just want to make sure that we're going beyond. And then thanks, Todd. I think talking about the emergency measure, love it, love it, love it. I'm kind of interested what you guys think of that idea, because I think having no scrapping is what we need. You will see HVIP works well. Why? Because there's no scrapping, right? If Carl Moore did the same thing, we'd be going through your budget too. My hopes is that would be the case. We've lost traction in this last year from the program being shut down in September because all the interested parties pretty much lost opportunities. And even though there's funding today, those customers got upset and just left, right? So I'd love to hear how you guys feel about removing the scrapping. And I think also understanding that OEMs today that are in that omnibus issue that Todd had brought up, they're trying to figure out how they cooperate, right? They don't know what to do because they would have violations for a diesel engine, right? And some of them are dependent on those that already have the credits to bring a diesel in without worrying about CARB, right? So we're in this weird space that you can't find a solution for newer diesels. So we've got old diesels, right? Whether it be CNG or whatever it's going to be, I don't know. But we're really, really stuck right now because the OEMs are afraid or don't know what to do. So my hopes is that we're not going backwards with research and development. We're still going to go forward. So I think if we find those solutions with those OEMs, I don't know what the answer and again is, but we need scalability and we're not there yet. So that emergency measure is a perfect solution to kickstart us again. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Really appreciate all the feedback and all the comments that you made. When we take statute into account, I don't believe that we could eliminate scrap entirely from our program. However, that's part of the reason why we are trying to offer, and we're considering offering a new purchase or a scrap-free option going forward. So hopefully that would meet the need that we're hearing here, where we can kind of reduce the burden of scrapping itself with this particular project type.
Thank you.
Josh, I'm not seeing any more comments or questions that have been in the Q&A, and I'm not seeing any more hands. So we can give another few more seconds if anyone else has.
Give it a minute or so and then see if anyone has any additional questions.
William just raised his hand. William, go ahead. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah. So this is just a quick comment that Lisa reminded me of. I think something that CARB, and I don't know the viability of this, but I think something that CARB, and I've done a little bit of research on this, so but I don't know like if there would be conflict between CARB and federal regulations or whatnot. But I think opening up the market a little bit more might help us. I know for a fact there's OEMs across the world from Europe to Asia that have viably proven technology that can do a lot of the things that a lot of places are missing right now, but we're just not able to get them here. I mean, EREVs, extended range electric vehicles, that's like a new up and coming thing. I know Ford and a few other like startups are starting to do that, but those are commonplace everywhere else in the world. We're really far behind, to be completely honest. And I think if, CARB is supposed to be like, I mean, this is like what I've heard that CARB in California at large were like the champions of the green like push across the nation. We said like we as a state set the example. So I don't know the viability of this, but I think that's something that's extremely worth looking into. I mean, I've seen just across the border in Mexico, they have so much more options that we don't, and you see the vehicles, the prices are lower than the OEMs are giving them for here. The same exact OEMs are offering completely different prices. So sometimes I just feel like I don't know if that's like some discussion that could be had between, you know, us that purchase them, the state, those OEMs, and have just more competition, or what the solution is to get, you know, the end goal, which is reduce emissions, cleaner air, all of that. Just food for thought.
Thank you, William. Yeah, we'll definitely take that back.
Harold Holmes, go ahead and unmute yourself, state your name and affiliation. You should be able to speak.
Thank you. This is Harold Holmes with H2RE. I wanted to thank Ken Batty for responding to my locomotive questions. And then I just wanted to add one other comment. Because of the cost of new Tier 4 locomotives, they are now at skyrocketing levels. Whether there'd be some consideration in the future of changing the percentage of contribution towards the capital costs, because I think that would help in moving things along. So right now, Class 1s are 80%, Class 3s are 85%. And the hope would be that somehow there might be a movement closer to 90% because of the cost we're talking about. So, Ken, there you are. Yep.
Hey, Harold.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate all the responses.
Sure. So that is correct. Right now, Class 1s, Class 2 line hauls are eligible for up to 80% funding. Class 3s, switchers, and passenger locomotives are eligible for up to 85% funding. A higher percentage is something that we can possibly consider. I will mention that locomotives have a higher percentage than other categories, but yeah, that's something we can take back and see if we can make that a bit higher.
Yeah, my only reason I'm advocating is the cost effectiveness. And of course, when you're talking about PM reductions in and around communities, there's significant benefits from locomotives. So just a couple of other points to add to that. Hopefully, we can sort of see that, especially with Class 1s in the future, if the 98 MOU sunsets, that opens up another door for that. So,
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And about that, I'll mention that MOU is going to sunset in 2030.
yes.
So after that sunsets, there might be some flexibility. Right now, for those Class 1s, we consider a baseline for a Tier 2 average. So even if a Class 1 is replacing like a Tier 0, we use a class or a Tier 2 for the calculation purposes. But after that MOU sunsets, there might be some flexibilities that we can offer there as well.
Yeah, let me just add one other point to that. Since acquiring new Tier 4 locomotives can take 2 to 3 years in advance, we're essentially approaching the 2030 deadline. So I just wanted to make sure that you're looking out to the horizon, because it's in the locomotive world. That's basically what we're talking about. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
Yep.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Ken.
Josh, I'm not seeing any additional hands being raised or any questions being typed right now.
Well, we'll maybe give it one more minute, see if any more questions come to mind for anyone else, and otherwise we can wrap it up after that.
Nothing new so far. No last minute
Okay.
hands raised.
Well, I think we could probably go ahead and end the webinar then. Thank you, everybody, so much for the robust conversation and listening in today. Again, feel free to reach out. We provided our contacts through the presentation, and the presentation is posted on our website. Thank you, everybody.